Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic. So this week I am super excited. I am playing one of my most hated archetypes in all of Magic, a burn deck. But I think this deck is legitimately good. Like, if you look at the decks in Standard, people are trying to ramp into Emeralds, dirtle around with their graveyards. This deck is just so punishing against all the stuff that people are trying to do. So I think this deck is, like, a legitimately good deck in our current Standard format. And, of course, it's only $53 in paper, 51 ticks on Magic Online. So I'm really excited for this, even though it's an archetype that I don't especially enjoy playing all that much. We're talking, of course, about Alchemist Burn. A quick reminder before we break it down, if you enjoy Budget Magic and you enjoy this Alchemist Burn deck, it would be amazing of you if you could take a minute, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. All that stuff's a great way to support the site. Anyway, let's break down Alchemist Burn. So in all honesty, Alchemist Burn is pretty straightforward. What we want to do is get in some early damage with our creatures and then finish the game off with Burn. So we have Falkenrath Gorger and Zurgo Bell Striker as our 1-drops. Falkenrath Gorger, just a red Savannah Lions. That is basically it. I think it's a little worse than it used to be because Liliana's kind of on the rise and it dies really easily for free to Liliana's +1. However, if we play it on turn 1, it should be able to get in 2, 4, maybe in the dream scenario, 6 damage. And that's all we're looking for. If we can get in 4 damage with Falkenrath Gorger and then our opponent kills it with Liliana, we don't even really care because its job is done. That's kind of the goal of both of these cards, Zurgo as well, is just to get in hopefully 4 damage for 1 mana with these creatures before they die to something, or before they get stonewalled by our opponent's blockers. Zurgo does have some additional benefit in that we can dash it in the late game to dodge sorcery speed removal, get in some damage right away on an empty board or if our opponent's tapped out. So that's kind of nice that we can kind of fireball it in there, ball lightning it in there for 2 damage. But most of the time we're looking to play it on turn 1, try to get in that 4 damage, and if we can get in 4 damage with these creatures, it makes it much easier to actually close out the game with our burn as the game goes along. And then, our other creatures, we have Abbot of Keep and Bedlam Reveler. So, Abbot of Keep is very powerful still, although it has the same Die to Liliana problem as Falkenrath Gorger. The good news is, it draws us a card when it enters the battlefield. On turn 2, it doesn't draw us a card, but on turn 4 or turn 5, we almost always can just immediately cast whatever we exile with Abbot, which makes it very good, and it has potential to get in for a lot of damage thanks to Prowess. Bedlam Reveler is really high variance in our deck. It is either the best card in our entire deck, or it is the worst card in our entire deck. So we hope that it's the best card more often than it's the worst card. The problem is, our deck is 1/3 instants and sorceries. We have 20 instants or sorceries in our deck, which means Bedlam Reveler is basically a 5-drop most of the time, but even that has variance. In a regular draw, it's probably a 5-drop. We get a 3/4 for 5. Ideally, we will have emptied our hand over the first 4 turns, so Bedlam Reveler is just draw 3, which is super good. When we have that scenario where we just, on turn 5, play Bedlam Reveler, we're empty-handed, it's our last card, we get to Ancestral Recall into more burn spells, it's very often going to win us the game. It leaves behind a good prowess body, plus drawing 3 is just absurd in a mono red deck. That's something that mono red does not get access to. It's like we're playing a treasure cruise almost that comes with a body for our mono red deck. On the other hand, when we have multiples in our opening hand, it's kind of rough and it's hard to reduce the cost because we have multiple Bedlam Revelers, which are instants or sorceries, and we kind of have a natural mulligan, I guess, when that happens. So those are the situations where it's really bad. Also, if we get a creature heavy draw, it can sometimes just not come down in a reasonable amount of time. We only have 22 lands, so we're not always going to get up to 8 mana. Hopefully, we're not going to get to 8 mana, because if we're getting to 8 mana, we're probably losing to Emeralds and things like that. But still, I think it's still worth it as a 3 of. Hopefully, we just draw 1 of them and get to cast it on turn 5, and it's great. But be warned, drawing multiples is pretty bad, so when you're making your mulligan decisions, keep that in mind. If you get the triple Bedlam Reveler hand, you probably don't want to keep it, and even double is kind of the equivalent of a mulligan, because you're going to have to discard one of them anyway if you resolve the first one, which may or may not happen. Then we have the namesake card, maybe the most underrated card in Eldritch Moon, Thermal Alchemist. Thermal Alchemist does not look all that scary. It's a 0/3 with Defender for 2 mana. The thing is, it is actually super good. It blocks a lot of relevant things. Thermal Alchemist, Stonewalls, Reflector Mage, Sylvan Advocate in the early and mid games before our opponent gets 6 lands, Grim Flayer. There's a lot of things that Thermal Alchemist just blocks and our opponent cannot attack us with. Plus, how it works with spells is it essentially gives all of our burn spells +1 damage, because we can tap it to deal a damage, but then we get to untap it whenever we cast an instant or sorcery. So we cast an instant or sorcery, tap the Thermal Alchemist in response, untap Thermal Alchemist, and we get an additional damage. So our 3 damage burn spells all of a sudden deal 4, our 4 damage burn spells deal 5, and that means we need maybe 1, sometimes even 2 less burn spells to win the game, which is a pretty huge deal for a burn deck when you're trying to resolve X number of spells that each deal X amount of damage. Cutting 1 or 2 spells off of that makes up for flooding out a little bit, drawing 1 too many lands, things like that. So Thermal Alchemist is just super good, and I would not want to play this deck without 4 of them. It is the best card in the deck. Our best draws are a lot of times are when we would just double Thermal Alchemist and then play burn spells, and we just kill our opponent so quickly and easily. Then, as far as burn that we use to untap Thermal Alchemist, we have 8 3-damage burn spells in Incendiary Flow and Fiery Temper. We're not that great at madnessing Fiery Temper. We have a couple ways of doing it, but basically, a lot of the time, it is just 3 damage for 3 mana, untaps our Thermal Alchemist, so actually 4 damage for 3 mana, which makes it exquisite Firecraft, essentially, that we can randomly sometimes madness. Incendiary Flow, sometimes we use it to kill a creature when we really need to, but a lot of the times, we're just throwing this at our opponent's face, untapping our Thermal Alchemist, and trying to get our opponent down to 0. And then, this is the package that I think makes this whole deck playable. The reason I wanted to build this deck was not only Thermal Alchemist, but also Collective Defiance, which is like a super expensive, but also extra powerful version of Searing Blood or something. So, most of the time we want to cast it for 4 mana, and then we can kill one of our opponent's creatures, and do 3 to our opponent's face, and untap our Thermal Alchemist, of course, which makes it just super good. Having an extra damage compared to Searing Blood on creature is actually sometimes relevant if our opponent has Delirium and a Grim Flayer, for example. It still dies to Collective Defiance. So that's nice. We can also just do 3 damage to our opponent's face, and occasionally we use it to discard our hand and draw that many cards. So once we get to maybe 4 or 5 lands, depending on if we have a Bedlam Reveler, we kind of just want to hold on to lands for the most part, in hopes that we get to draw Collective Defiance, discard 2 or 3 lands, and turn those into burn spells with the underused mode on Collective Defiance. And then Exquisite Firecraft is just the finisher. 4 damage for 3 mana, 5 damage for 3 mana if you count Thermal Alchemist, untapping in between. Often uncounterable because we have a lot of spells. So if we can get in a little bit of damage in the early game with our creatures, we have a lot of powerful burn, especially with the kicker of Thermal Alchemist, that it's pretty easy to close out the game pretty quickly with this deck. And then, just Fiery Impulse, it does untap our Thermal Alchemist, but this one is just to deal with creatures, so Jace Vryn's Prodigy, for example, a Sylvan Advocate, for example. There's an argument, I guess, between this and Galvanic Bombardment. I like Fiery Impulse, personally. Our deck doesn't see that many cards. If we were drawing through our deck more, maybe Galvanic Bombardment would be better. But we will almost always have Spell Mastery. It kills a Jace on turn 2, and by turn 3, it should be able to kill a Sylvan Advocate or something like that. Mana base wise, all mountains and Gyre Reach Sanitarium. So Gyre Reach Sanitarium is a 2-of. It lets us discard our Fiery Tempers for madness. It's one of our ways to do that. But mostly it's just a way to filter through our deck. It's actually super key because one of the ways a burn deck loses is by flooding out, and Gyre Reach Sanitarium lets us turn those extra lands into damage. I really like it in this deck. It is quite strong. In the sideboard, this is our control deck package. Molten Vortex is just a repeatable source of damage, lets us turn our lands into shocks. We can play it on turn 1. Our opponent really can't interact with it if we're playing a deck where our opponent's going to be killing our Falconwrath Gorgers with Ileanas and disrupting us with discard. Those decks normally can't deal with the Molten Vortex, and they don't win quickly, so over the course of the time, we just deal like 10 damage with Molten Vortex, and that usually wins us the game. And then Golden Knight Castigator comes in decks where we're not really racing. If we're playing a deck that is pretty controlling, it's almost a guaranteed hit for 4 damage. There's not too many removal spells that can deal with it at instant speed. And it's just a really big body. Grasp of Darkness doesn't hit it. It can kill a Planeswalker out of nowhere. If our opponent plays a Gideon or something, we can untap Golden Knight Castigator, kill it. Same with Nissa, so it's good at doing that as well. That's another benefit of Thermal Alchemist, is you can redirect that damage to Planeswalkers, so being able to ping Planeswalkers to death is also a cool little trick you can do with this deck. But these cards come in typically in control matchups. Then we have some more removal. Rending Volleys for the Spirit decks, for Avacyn decks, anything with white or blue flyers. Tears of Valakut, also good at killing flyers, better against non-white or blue flyers, still can't be countered. And then Lightning Axe deals with Thought-Knot Seers, deals with Reality Smashers, and we can usually set it up to discard our Fiery Temper or something like that to get a little value from the discard. And then our aggro deck package, we got Seismic Ruptures as our Pyroclasm. It's good against white humans and decks like that if we can play it early enough. Not necessarily good against spirits because it doesn't hit creatures with flying. What is incredibly good against decks that are either aggro or flying is Weaver of Lightning. A 1/4 with reach for 3 is already really good, and then 1 damage to a creature an opponent controls whenever we cast a spell is also super good. This deck, this card can just kind of wreck a Spirits deck or any sort of like flyery tempo deck all by itself. It blocks well, it kills things, it just does everything we want to do, and it's even fine against like white humans. So we play it on turn 3 and we get to just ping an extra creature to death while we're throwing our burn spells at our opponent's face. So it is a very good sideboard card, and that is Alchemist Burn in Standard. And this deck, I really think it is legitimately good. Not just, like, good for budget Magic, but just, like, a really solid deck. I think there is some tuning. The number of Bedlam Revelers, not sure. Maybe 2 is better than 3 to minimize the chances of having 2 in the opening hand. The Falconwrath Gorger versus Ileana issue, another thing that I'm wondering about. But in general, I think this deck is super good, and if you're looking for something that can beat a lot of the big decks in Standard for only $50, I think this is the direction to point you in. So I'm really excited for this one. Anyway, enjoy the matches. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.